Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Kent Connects and Smarter Digital Services Digital Accessibility webinar. We are going to take you through a presentation which talks about digital accessibility and PDFs, and that's a recorded session, so all the while that's running you can be adding questions to our Q&A window at the right-hand side of your screen. At the end of the session, we will be handing over to Jane and James, who will be answering some questions that you've been posting up throughout the session. So I hope you have lots of questions that you want to put forward to us, and I hope you find the session interesting. I'm now going to hand you over to Jane, who will provide you a presentation on digital accessibility. Thank you, Jane.
Hello, I'm Jane Hazelden from Smarter Digital Services. Welcome to our session about online documentation under the accessibility regulations and what it means for you and your colleagues. And thank you also to Kent Connects for inviting us to share our accessibility session with you. We're hoping that you will take some information away from today that you can start working on straight away. Many of us have a multitude of documentation published on our website in PDF format, in Word and Excel. Some of these documents give crucial information on life essential services that we provide. Some of the documents are very long. Some can be 100 to 200 pages. For someone without any impairments, you can quickly-ish, scan through one of those documents to locate and then read the information that you want. Now let's take the example of someone with a visual impairment. They may rely on a screen reader, which is a bit of technology that will read out what is displayed on the screen. In order to avoid the screen reader having to read the document from the very beginning, there is a capability for the user to skip through identified chapters or headings to find the information they're looking for. I'd like to show you this video from the NC State University, where Greg Krause takes us through some guidance about how screen readers tackle a content page with various sections and subsections.
Welcome to this presentation on how headings help screen reader users. My name is Greg Krause, University IT Accessibility Coordinator at NC State University. So how are headings used by screen reader users? Well, there are two main benefits that headings provide. First, it allows screen reader users an easy way to skim the page, to basically see what the major points are on the page. Second, it lets them easily jump from section to section within a page. So let's see an example of how this actually works. So let's say this is the first time you've ever come to this page. Just by glancing at it, you can skim the page really quickly and get the feel for what this page is about. You can see that the title is the NC State University IT Accessibility blog. You can already see three stories: Google Apps Accessibility Guidelines, FAQs for ICT Accessibility Regulation, and Creating Accessible PDFs Microsoft Publisher. You even see some blocks off to the right for some categories of information like recent posts, categories, archives, and contact. All of that information, you can gather that in just a matter of seconds. The reason it's easy to do that is because there's been a layer of visual information added to the page. Some text has been made bigger or bolder, or the background color has changed to show where the important points are on the page, and that's what lets you visually jump very quickly from section to section to see what are the important parts of this page and get an overall feel for the contents of the page. So if you were a screen reader user, how would you experience this page if you didn't have these visual cues for where the important sections of the page are? So here's a plain text version of that same page. And you can see it's much harder to find where one story begins, where one ends, or where different sections of the page are. You would in essence have to read through the entire document before you get an idea for what the contents are, and then you'd have to find out from cues from the text where something might begin or where something might end. So coming back to our page that is marked with headings to indicate where all the important sections are, let's hear how a screen reader user would actually encounter this page. And the way that a screen reader user is going to do this is they have a simple key combination that they can press to quickly jump from heading to heading within a page to be able to, in essence, skim the page.
NC State University IT Accessibility blog visited link heading level 1. Google Apps Accessibility Guidelines visited link heading level 2. FAQs for ICT Accessibility Regulation link heading level 2. Creating accessible PDFs. Microsoft Publisher visited link heading level 2. Recent posts heading level 2. Categories heading level 2. Archives heading level 2. Contact heading level 2.
One thing to keep in mind is a screen reader is only able to jump from heading to heading within a page when you have actually denoted within the document where the headings are. And that's done differently in different software applications. But you usually select a bit of text and say, this is a heading 1 or this is a heading 2. Just simply making a font bigger or bolder does not allow a screen reader to be able to find where the next heading begins. It's only when you actually code something as a heading that they're able to take advantage of that.
So let's think about those disabilities. There are 4 main categories that we need to consider: vision, hearing, motor skills, and cognitive. Don't forget, under vision, that not only includes people who can't see at all, but others who have impaired vision. Both have different needs, so you could say there are really 5 categories. There are different ways people with disabilities navigate through and access the content on our website. I'll give you a moment to jot down a few you can think of. Just pause the presentation for a minute at the bottom left, and when you're ready, click again to unpause. Okay, so what have we got? Some might use a keyboard instead of a mouse. You could also change the browser settings to make content easier to read, for example, colours or font sizes. You might use a screen reader to read content out loud. You might need to use a screen magnifier to enlarge all or part of a screen. Maybe you would use voice commands to navigate a website. So we have a challenge before us to sort out our documentation, and we also have a deadline to do it by. For those not aware of the timeline, we need to do this by the 23rd of September this year. First of all, the government legislation on accessibility. We need to adhere to the legislation from government, being that everything we publish must be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Let's look at these 4 points in more detail. Perceivable means that content and the interface elements must be able to be identified by means of the senses. For many users, this means perceiving in a primarily visual way, while for others it may be a matter of sound or touch. Operable means that a user can successfully use controls, buttons, navigation, and other necessary interactive elements. For many users, this means identifying an interface control visually and then clicking, tapping, or swiping. For other users, using a computer keyboard or voice commands may be the only means by which they can operate and control the interface. Understandable refers to content being presented and formatted in the predictable design and usage pattern that is concise and appropriate to the audience in its voice and tone. Users should be able to comprehend the content and learn and remember how to use the interface. Lastly, we have robust. That's making a website and all the documents on it accessible and robust enough to work across a wide spectrum of technologies, including assistive technology. What do we have to do? What is our action to take? And what a challenge this is proving to be for us all. We must make all existing online documents accessible by the 23rd of September 2020. And we must publish only accessible documents from now on. So the government regulations and our taking action to conform with them will produce good customer service for everybody. And that means inclusive for all, so that everybody can get the maximum experience out of the content they're looking at and no one is denied the user experience. But also, making your website and online documents accessible is not just about focusing on different disabilities. It can also be about certain circumstances. For example, many people don't have a desktop or a laptop, so they'll be looking at our websites and reading our documents on a mobile phone. And their experience will be different to desktop users. So we need to consider all these situations. The next part of the challenge is to decide within our organisations who will be responsible for producing these accessible documents. You may have a digital team who are able to help with adjustments, but I bet most of you are turning to the services themselves and asking them to take responsibility for producing and reformatting their material. This means that your teams need to ensure that all the documents that are put onto the website are compliant with the new regulations, and that all existing documents are compliant too. It's also important to remember that your organisation is solely responsible for published material that has been produced by third parties under your commission. They will need to follow the guidelines issued under your instructions in just the same way. Any third-party content that is neither funded nor developed by you, nor under your control, is excluded from these regulations. In other words, any user-contributed content, such as documents that are voluntarily submitted, say, to support comments in a consultation. Thinking about historical documents, for example, archived material that is not fundamental to the operation of today's business is also excluded. This might include old maps, manuscripts, and other similar documents. There are also exclusions for live audio and video, and any pre-recorded video published before the 23rd of September 2020. Let's think about our documents from a user's point of view. Our documents need to work for our users. We could call that user-centered design. To accomplish the shift to more user-centered design, we need to ensure our documents are user-friendly, accessible, current and valid. Let's start with thinking about the format of the document. PDFs have problems, but they're often used for convenience. Can you think of the reason why we use PDFs? Why did we start using them in the first place? I'll give you a moment to jot down a few you can think of. Again, pause the presentation for a minute and unpause when you're ready to rejoin. Okay, so what have we got? Here's a few that I've written down. They're quick and easy to create. They give you control over the design. They're easy for people to download and print. They have the feel of a standalone product. And thinking about the problems with PDFs, can you jot down some of the problems that using PDFs can cause? Again, pause the presentation for a minute and unpause when you're ready to rejoin. Okay, so here's some that I've written down. They don't change size to fit the browser. You end up having to zoom in. They're not designed for reading on mobile screens. The text is just too small. It's harder to track their use. After all, we'd love to know how many people are downloading or reading our PDFs. They cause difficulties for navigation and orientation. They can be hard for some users to access. Some people can't open PDFs. They're less likely to be kept up to date. Is this a current document or an old one? And they're hard to reuse. You can't edit them. This page is regarding asbestos in your home, and it has a download button for a PDF. If I was reading this with a screen reader, I might not even know what the download button would lead me to. I may not even be able to open the PDF. And there is the PDF. That's probably quite difficult to read on a mobile phone. At the moment, if you were to print off or download some of the documents on your website, you wouldn't know that they came from your website or when they were last updated if you hadn't added your logo and some branding details. Sometimes we even have photocopies, which means a person with impairments may have no chance at all to interact with this online service, as essentially a photocopy is just an image. Thinking then specifically about PDFs, what should be the very first question we ask ourselves? Does the document need to be a PDF? Usually there's no reason for a document to be a PDF unless you need a physical, like a wet signature on the document, or if it's extremely long and complex. The top advice from all expert sources is to publish this information as a web page or web pages. Look at the difference when a document's presented as a web page instead of a PDF. It has a great presentation, clarity, simplicity, as opposed to the PDF, which fills the screen with small text and it needs to be zoomed in to read. Here's an example of a checklist you could use to make a decision about whether information should be presented as a web page or a PDF. This particular one relates to existing PDFs that you may be reviewing. We can make this available to you to use and adapt after this session. Let's move on to the language we should use. This section covers the perceivable and understandable criteria of the regulations. We need to write in language that's as simple as possible. Simple language makes the document accessible to people with cognitive impairments and learning disabilities. I'm sure you've all heard of plain English, and this is a style of writing we should be aiming to use. And research shows that everyone prefers simple language, including specialist audiences, because it allows them to understand information as quickly as possible. Where you need to use technical terms, abbreviations or acronyms, explain what they mean the first time you use them. For example, personal independent payment, PIP in brackets, and national insurance, NI in brackets. Now let's think about how to keep the document itself simple. First of all, give the document a meaningful title. This will help people identify the page in search results and will ultimately give visitors a better chance of finding the information they're looking for. We all know about keeping our sentences and paragraphs short. This is a part of plain English that I mentioned earlier. Make sure the text is left aligned, not fully justified edge to edge. Fully justified text is actually not as readable as left-aligned text, especially so for those with a cognitive disability. Avoid underlining except for links. People expect underlined link text to be links, and we've seen this time and time again in user testing. When people would try to click on an underlined heading, it's something we come to recognise as a link. Documents with single continuous columns of text are easier to make accessible than documents with a more complex layout. This definitely helps screen readers read text in a logical read order. With blocks of text sitting in different positions on the page, screen readers don't know what order to read it out. Avoid footnotes where possible. Provide explanations in line instead. Again, this is a read order issue for screen readers. If the explanation is embedded in the text itself, it doesn't become disjointed from the original reference point. And avoid images containing text, as it's not possible to resize the text in the image. Text is fixed, and it may cause some people to have to zoom into the image to read the text. And that's also not good, because screen readers don't know there's text in the image, so that can get missed, and the visitor could miss out on some important information. Here's an example of a simply formatted document. It has a good title, short paragraphs written in a simple language with relatively short sentences, but you can see here a couple of things that aren't so good. One is the long URL. It would have been better to simply link directly from the wording, "Please also read the government advice for food business," as the link itself. This would be far more descriptive for the screen reader user. Also, there's no branding on this document, which means if I found it on the internet, I might not know who it belongs to. Let's give the document some structure. Break up your document to make it more readable. Smaller chunked information is better than long blocks of text. It's then easier to apply heading and subheadings to allow screen readers to work through the content. Use bullet points, numbered steps, and meaningful subheadings. Again, this helps the screen reader move through the document in a more structured way. It's also so much more readable for visual users too. We've identified this during our user testing sessions. Don't use bold to mark up subheadings. Bold's good for emphasis, but not necessarily good for subheadings. These need to be identified by using a larger font or in a different colour rather than bold alone. Use styles to create a hierarchy of headings. This is the main thing we need to do to get a good structure to the document. heading 1, heading 2, and so on, as we saw demonstrated on the video earlier. This is a very important part of the regulations and one that all your documents should adhere to. In Word, this is achieved by using the Styles options. It isn't enough to simply change the font size and colour. This doesn't designate a heading style, so we need to start using Word properly with the Styles options. And use single tab instead of spaces for paragraph indentations. If you use the spacebar to say add 5 spaces, this will be read out as blank, 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 blank by a screen reader. So use a single tab. We'll look at these in a bit more detail next. So first of all, let's look at using heading styles properly. Headings give your document a structure, helping people to navigate through and understand the content hierarchy. This helps all people, but it is especially important to those using screen readers because they rely on headings to understand the hierarchy of the information. Screen reader users can tab from heading to heading to heading to understand the content of the document before they specifically choose a heading and read that specific content. This example shows that when a document is exported from Word into PDF, these headings are turned into bookmarks and give screen readers a logical structure to follow, as well as being very useful for visual users. In Word, you can predefine styles in the Home ribbon. Some organisations may decide to preset these style options and form corporate templates for users to retain consistency and continuity of branding. What must be stressed here is that headings are not for making your document look pretty, they're for adding a hierarchy to your content. They contain information which is crucial for screen readers to be able to read out content to the screen reader user. In this section, we'll talk about hyperlinks and how we can make them accessible. It's very important that the text we use for hyperlinks describes where people will go if they click that link. If we use meaningful and descriptive link text, it makes it easier for everyone. If we use click here or download, for example, if a screen reader reads that link as click here, there's no indication of what click here will lead to, or download. Download what? Without clear context of where that hyperlink will take you, screen reader users can miss out on important content. So for example, instead of read more as a link, you could put this into context by creating a full link based on the words read more about the local plan. This will be read out in full in a screen reader as read more about the local plan link, which is so much more descriptive and also good for search engine optimization, so even more reason to do this. Another example of hyperlink use is using full URLs. You may have links like these in the document. There's a long link written out in full. The screen reader will try to read out each letter of this, which can be a pain if it's a long URL. It would be better to make the context of the link become the actual link, as in this example. Using links inappropriately are bad for accessibility, as they make it harder for people to understand where the link will take them. Link text should be descriptive and, if possible, unique. The next section is about avoiding using blank spaces or lines to create formatting of space. As I said earlier, a blank space will be read out by a screen reader as blank, 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 etc. If you tend to hit Tab or Enter over and over again to create formatting that you want, try to kick that habit. Hearing a bunch of white space identified by a screen reader as blank can be annoying, and it might give users with disabilities the impression that the document has ended. Instead, use document formatting. Use the tools for indentations, line spacing, page breaks, and styles to create the effect you want. Now let's look at formatting tables, and this could be in Word or Excel. Tables are great for organising data and information, but when they're read by a screen reader, they can be very confusing. Tables must never be used solely to improve the layout of your page and should be used sparingly in your documents. If you're using tables for data or statistics, then there are some things you can do to make them more navigable and more accessible. Firstly, you need to use clear and designated column headings. Just like you use style headings throughout your text in Word, use column headers to make sure your tables are consistent and easy to navigate. Make sure that under Table Style Options in the Table Design tab, you select Header Row so that screen readers will identify the top row as column headings. The next thing is to make sure tables are simple and logical as possible. If possible, avoid having merged or split cells only in certain columns or rows because this will be confusing when the content's read out loud. Stick to a standard, evenly laid out format. And try to make your tables read logically from left to right and top to bottom. To get a better idea of how a screen reader will navigate your table, use the Tab key on your keyboard to check the order that the cursor goes through your columns and rows. Now let's look at accessible images and charts. Firstly, the use of alt text. People with visual impairments, whether they're blind or have partial sight, may lose out if you use a lot of images, charts, shapes, photographs or clip art in your documents. This doesn't mean you have to skip those features, but what it does mean is that you have to add some alternative text or captions to explain what the image is about. Screen reading software will read out the alt text or the captions to make sure users with visual impairments don't miss out. Your alt text should be descriptive of the content, just like you would describe it to someone who can't see it, but it also needs to be concise. And don't forget your tables too. These can also carry alt text. So for example, a table like this could carry the alt text table showing road usage in Tunbridge Wells by various vehicle types. Now about the use of colour in charts. For people with red-green colour blindness, it's important to not have both red and green chart elements like lines, bars or segments. You can easily fix this by changing one of these to an alternative colour. Also remember that green often signifies success and red failure, or green positive and red negative, so all the more reason to stay away from these examples. One thing that I do is to try printing out the page on a black and white printer and seeing if there's enough colour contrast between the various elements. If there is, then it's likely you've hit on some good colour combinations. If not, then you can always select a different combination. The next thing to consider is pie charts. They're not for everyone. To be honest, pie charts aren't great. They can be difficult for those with colour perception issues like red-green colour blindness or colour deficiency. Furthermore, imagine trying to match the legends and the slices if you can only see a quarter of the screen at once. If there's any other way to depict this information, please consider using it. Lastly, we should write and design with all kinds of users in mind. Some users may have cognitive impairments and benefit from clear language. Some may have colour blindness or other visual impairments that make low contrast text difficult to separate from the background. Some users who rely on screen readers will have to listen to every part of your document, sometimes over and over again. So if you've got any unnecessary contents, try to weed them out. Be thorough with your contents, but if possible, stay simple in your approach. Keep the titles short, especially if they appear often. If you're using colour, avoid overlaying very similar colours. Contrast makes text easier to read for everybody, especially those with visual impairments. And also, don't rely on colour coding alone. For users who can't perceive colour, make sure that information is conveyed in multiple ways, not just through colour of the text. For example, an error message might typically be written in red, but also add a cross to indicate the error for those who can't see that colour. Don't forget to use the inbuilt accessibility checker in Word, Excel or PowerPoint. This will help you find and fix any errors and achieve an accessible document. Published documents must be up to date. Do you know what documents are on your web pages and when they were last updated? Your organisation may already manage this with revisions logged by the relevant teams, but is there an automated workflow you could use to manage your documents? You could follow a procedure like this. Every document should have an owner and an email address. The owner will pick a review date, for example 12 months or 3 years, or forever for historical documents that will not change, e.g. financial records. The document owner would receive an email alert 1 month before the review date asking them to review their content. The owner then, after reviewing the content, could verify the validity by selecting Approve as is, Upload a new or updated document, Archive, no longer required. If the document is not verified, the automated workflow would send regular reminders before the review date, and then after expiry of the review, the document could be removed from public access. That's just an example, but it may be a process that you could put into place in your organisation if you haven't already done so. The next thing to consider is demonstrating the validity of a document. Once a document is downloaded by a user, it becomes a standalone publication, detached from the website. So to provide the best possible service and increase the usefulness of that standalone document, it's absolutely essential that it clearly demonstrates who published it, what is it about, when it was published, and the revision number. That means that each document must have your logo, a very clear and descriptive title, and a footer with all the relevant information. It's amazing how many documents you can find through Google that give no indication of who they belong to, when they were produced, and what they're actually about. So back to that challenge from earlier. Does the document really need to be a PDF at all? Why can't it be a web page? Work through the checklist I showed earlier and be prepared to challenge services about this. Endeavour to do your best to reduce the number of PDFs on your website. This will help you meet the accessibility regulations and make your content accessible to all. Finally, make sure to turn on your accessibility checker, which will help you to spot most accessibility issues. And save your document as an accessible document that's a PDF-A with bookmarks. If you need any help to create new accessible PDFs, any help with checking your current documents, or help with training workshops for your staff, please let us know at SDS. We're available to help you. Thank you very much for attending this webinar, and I hope you have great success with your online documents. We're now going to go over to a Q&A panel. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A message box.
Thank you, everyone. I think that was a very interesting presentation, and we seem to have lots of questions for Jane to answer. So I'm going to hand over to Jane, who's going to take us through, Jane and James, who are going to take us through some of these questions that we've had published. We hope to get through all of them, but if there's anything we can't answer, we will pick up with it after the webinar. So over to Jane and James.
Hello, hopefully you can hear me. This is Jane. Okay, I'll just start at perhaps the top of the Q&A panel, and we'll see what the first few questions are. There have been some questions around screen readers and whether they're free, and also other questions about using free ones. Is that kind of good enough? Well, there are free screen readers. First of all, the one that you heard in that video from the American man, that was NVDA, and that's free. I think it possibly is only for PC. I'm not sure if it's Mac either. I think it's an exe file, so it's probably a Windows tool. There's also various browser tools you can use, and smartphone tools, like iPhone has got a voiceover and speak screen. There's also Dragon Naturally Speaking, which is a speech recognition software. I'm not sure if that's got a free version or not. And at the moment, JAWS, which is the expensive one, which is very sophisticated, does cost quite a lot of money. There is currently, and I think it is just for COVID period, a 90-day offer to get that for free. I'm not sure if the 90 days is from when you sign up or whether the 90 days is from when they announced this, which was the 31st of March. But even so, there's still a month where you could actually get JAWS for free, and I'll try and put the link onto the Q&A for that, and you can see whether you can sign up for it. And about using free screen reader software, yes, it's fine. They will probably all show slightly different results, so they're not 100%, and nothing is 100% on the checkers. If you can use a variety, that's really good, and you'll soon recognize what they're finding and where they all sort of match up. But a visual inspection alongside screen reader is the way to go, really. Anything else you want to add to that, James?
No, I totally agree with that. I think manual tests go a long way, and you're not going to be able to find everything with an automated tool, but it's a good place to really begin. So I would suggest using a combination, a hybrid approach.
And there were, alongside the tools that we're talking there about screen reader tools, but then you also have the accessibility checker tools, of which you've got, there was a question a little bit further down about whether we can use the accessibility tools to do this. You've got in Word, there's an accessibility checker which is built in, and you can have that running the whole time you're creating a Word document. It's available in Windows 10, and if you look at I think it's the Ease of Access Center in older versions of Windows or Word, you will be able to find the accessibility checker there. Outside of Word, you could go to Acrobat Pro, which has obviously got an accessibility checker, but that is a paid-for program, so you may find colleagues don't all have access to that. Perhaps web teams will. And there are a couple of others that I found that are free online. They do take some sort of installation, so they're usually ones that you might have to get IT to install for you. One's called Common Look, and it's a PDF checker, and another one called Pave, which is a PDF checker. And so you might want to try and download those and see whether they help or work for you at all. So those are some tools that are available for you. Let's see what the next question might be. Okay, where to begin? You've got a huge amount of documents, but you don't know where to begin. Okay, perhaps the best thing to do is to analyze what PDFs you've got. Perhaps look at your analytics in Google Analytics, or even ones that you know are going to get looked at a lot. Anything that you can find which is accessed a lot, which is really fundamental to your current day-to-day business, those need to be top of your list. Try and create yourself a priority order, basically, of the most important down to the least important, and just start at the top, work your way down. All best endeavours to get them all done, but by the 23rd, that's everyone's best endeavour. Anything that you're finding that you're struggling with, you could if you make a roadmap of your intentions and your target dates when you're aiming to get things done by, and you could publish that roadmap as part of your accessibility statement. So that's showing your intentions. It's not your get out of jail free card though, unfortunately, because it does still have to be done by the 23rd of September. No extension for COVID. That has been said to us by GTS, so you still got to plough ahead with this. If you can make sure that anything you know you can't achieve, set a date when you intend to achieve it by, write it on a roadmap, and make sure you publish that with your accessibility statement. Then you're showing your best intentions, but don't let that date just keep on getting changed, because you've really got to show good intentions to get them fixed by that date if you possibly can. Okay, any more here? Does that help? Anything else you want to add to that, James?
I think that's a good explanation, and I think the only thing I would probably add is it's worth working with the people that created the documents in the first place to make them accessible and help them understand how to make it accessible. If you've picked up those skills, because it's a new thing for everybody, and those people who actually created the documents know the documents better than anyone, and they're likely to be producing documents in future for you as well. So by helping upskill the staff that you're working with, you can also help make a more accessible sort of roadmap overall. And just on the how to prioritize and things, another thing to look at is one of the exemptions in the regulations is related to Office file formats, which includes things like PDFs and Word documents. And any Office file format that's published before the 23rd of September 2018 is actually exempt from the regulations unless it's needed for an active administrative process relating to the public sector body. So if that document is there purely for information and it's an old document, so pre-2018, then it doesn't have to be changed.
Hopefully that will help. And also any document which isn't fundamental to the operation of your business that's been produced by someone else, or you haven't commissioned that or paid for it, that's exempt too. So you know, if you have got things like commenting on a planning application, you haven't got control of that document. It wasn't something you commissioned or paid for, so you don't have to worry about making that accessible. And you also don't need to mention in your accessibility statement things which are naturally exempt in the conditions. You don't have to then state that as well in the accessibility statement. You only state what you know you need to achieve in the accessibility statement that you're perhaps falling short of. Any others that I've got on my list here? Who's ultimately responsible with each directorate to ensure this work is completed? The whole organisation. Whoever's heading up the project of making sure your documents are, and your content and everything you deliver is accessible. And have you got any views on this, James? I mean, every organisation is going to be different, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And it's another one of those legal questions that you need to ask your senior management at the end of the day. Because if the Equality and Human Rights Commission, who are actually enforcing this regulation, did come knocking because they received a complaint, then there should be an accountable officer ready to deal with that. So have those conversations if you're not aware of who is responsible.
Okay, and then we got a question about the sort of consequences of what happens if you haven't done what you need to do by September. Well, what could happen is you could, if you've been audited by GDS, you could be contacted by them. Hopefully they're not just going to fine you instantly for not doing it. Hopefully, and they've stressed this, they want to work with you to achieve what you need to do. Their intention isn't about getting revenue in from you, I'm sure. They want to make sure that they are doing this for not only the legal issues, but also the moral issues of why we need to do this. It's accessibility for moral reasons as much as anything. But if you can make sure that you have a really well-written accessibility statement with all your intentions, all your deadlines, your roadmap, anything that you're not achieving and what you're doing about that, if it maybe has to involve a third party, you can write that in. Accessibility statement, it's mapping out whether it's going to work, and you know, giving it your best and your best shot to get things done by the due date. So hopefully there won't be fines out there. Not even sure what the fine rate is. Do you know that, Jay? We haven't got any revenue anymore, have we?
So just to go back a bit, you're absolutely right, Jane. And a roadmap is really important here, purely because showing that you're taking active steps towards compliance is a lot better than showing nothing at all and ignoring regulation. So as long as you can show that you're taking steps at the moment, that's the important thing, particularly when it comes to showing sort of your users and the citizens that you're serving that you do care and you are trying to make a difference. So it is going to be a gradual thing. And with regards to fines and how it's actually enforced. This regulation is enforced under the Equality Act 2010, so it's the same consequences, which can be up to unlimited damages. But you've got to remember about the reputational damage that comes with it, and the fact that any issues are going to be probably quite heavily publicised, so there is the risk of secondary challenge as well from the public.
Okay, let's just see anything else on here. I think there's a few people sort of concerned here about if they've already got an existing PDF, but they don't have the original Word document. So you've only got a PDF, maybe it's quite a long document. It's actually it's almost harder to try and fix a complex PDF document than actually rebuild it in Word. I know it's probably not what you want to hear, but it is a bit like when you've got an old house and you're trying to do it up. Sometimes it's actually easier to knock it down and start again than try and fix bits. So, and also thinking about what James said earlier, we need to educate everybody in the organisation who's going to be writing documents from now on to actually do it properly. So this is the ideal time for them to rebuild documents, doing it properly in Word, using all the settings, headings, styles, and all those sorts of things. So as much as anything, you're educating your staff. We probably at SDS could help some training with staff to do any of that sort of thing. Perhaps some more practical kind of exercises around how they can actually use all the inbuilt features of Word and Excel. So do let us know if you want us to get a little bit more detail. Depends, it's a little bit more difficult without being able to be face to face in a room, but I'm sure we'll be able to find a way of delivering a course of some sort to you to help colleagues if you do want to do that. Just think, is there anything else on here that we haven't covered? I haven't looked at the ones that have come in at the end. What happens if a screen reader reads our site correctly on one browser like Chrome but does not work correctly on another, such as IE? Is there a way around it, or is it just down to the screen reader we use? I'm not really sure the answer of that. It depends what browsers you're supporting. It should work on both. If it doesn't, then maybe that's down to some coding of your own site or your document. I mean, obviously documents are different to websites. Websites are built differently to just a PDF. I don't know the ins and outs of every bit of screen reader technology. Do you know anything, James, about that kind of thing?
Well, all I will say is, particularly with Internet Explorer, it is slowly sort of being phased out. So when many modern browsers are sort of moving to newer coding standards and better functionality, unfortunately the screen readers will be being upgraded with those browsers, and that sometimes does knock out compliance and various bits of compatibility with older browsers like IE. So that's why when you're testing, it's good to get the sort of tests done in a couple of different browsers, just to make sure that you are taking into account the different browsers that people use.
Mm-hmm. And we've got another question here about, well, there's another one saying loads of people in an organisation creating PDFs. Is there any guidance we can share with them, or do you need any training? I think I actually covered that really by saying, yeah, we can definitely help with some training of staff in your organisations. So take the details down for that. I just wonder if there's another slide that maybe has some contact details on that we might be able to show you. If not, we'll be in touch with you. There we go. We've got my contact details there, and also Kent Connect. So if you want to get in touch with SDS, we can see if we can sort something out for you. We've got another one here saying our department show no interest in sorting out website accessibility issues. However, if Kent Connect's published a Kent ranking of our sites that was sent to the chief execs, it might focus. Definitely. There you go, Kent Connects. Would you be able to get a Kent ranking? Don't know whether you've actually got plans to study everybody's, because it means an audit of everybody, doesn't it? I don't know if Kent Connects have got a view on that. We'll perhaps get that covered by by the team later and see whether they've got anything that they can suggest. What would you suggest with regards to making flowcharts accessible? That's something I haven't myself even thought about accessibility wise. They're quite complex, aren't they? And is that something that you would need to see visually, and with maybe a text version of that? Could you say what the flowchart is saying in a text format, almost like read out what the story of that flowchart is? Sounds quite daunting. I'm not sure how PowerPoint. Maybe you need to run a flowchart through something in like say PowerPoint and see how it reads out in a screen reader. That's one thing that I haven't actually tried, but I'll have a go, and perhaps I can get back to you. If I know your email address, I could see if I could get back to you. So we'll perhaps follow up with that one afterwards. I think Julie will tell you a little bit more about next week's accessibility conference in a minute. What about making maps like ones showing planning changes or highways changes accessible? Maps is an issue. They're visual. They have visual bias. Maps are all about what you see. The only other way is to explain in words what you can see, if that's possible. But do maps have 100% exclusion, James, or is that a kind of slight thing with visual? I'm not sure with maps.
Maps is an interesting one because the regulations state that online maps are an exemption, as well as mapping services, as long as the same information the map is showing is provided in an alternative format, such as if the map's showing a pin, for example, with an address on it, then that address can be listed next to the map. That's the sort of alternative that they're after. Within a document, it's really something that hasn't that you need to make a judgment on whether you feel that that's an online map or not. It's not a legally defined term, so again, it's one of those things that you'll have to make your own call on. But if a map is in the website, then it is an exemption.
Okay. And the last question on here is about whether we're going to supply this webinar afterwards for you to access. We will try and find a way of you being able to see this. It'll either be delivered by Kent Connects or by STS. We just need to work out how to position it somewhere so it can be viewed later. But obviously, this is really just the introduction. I went through quite a lot of different things there, but I haven't gone into the detail. So if you want a session where we actually go into a lot more detail, that would really pad out that, and maybe some practical examples and things, we can definitely build that into another session for you. So you might want to just use this as the intro, but build on that with some training for your actual staff. So I'm sure we can manage to do that for you. That's the last of the questions there. I think I've covered everything that was on the question list.
Thank you, Jane. We've just had a couple more questions coming through at the last second. I'll answer on the accessibility webinar. That's something that James has really been leading on, and we're going to cover a wide range of topics. I think the agenda has now gone out, but if there's anything that people feel that they'd really be interested in having another Kent Connects webinar on, we'd be happy to invite Smarter Digital Services back to do another webinar, or work with specialists in whatever area that people feel. If people have found this a really useful way of sharing and asking questions and learning, then we're happy to do more presentations, and we'll ask people for feedback on that. We've also had an update on the flowchart, so there's a link just come through on the published questions on that, so that may help people on how to resolve that flowchart question. So what we'll be doing is we will be sending all these presentations out to everyone. So you will be able to share it and use it and rerun it and listen to things again. As Jane has said, you've got the contact details for Smarter Digital Services and for Kent Connects. So if you want to contact us to ask any more questions or any ask about training, then you're welcome to do so. But we're now coming to the end. We've got 5 minutes to go. So if anyone has any burning questions that we haven't answered yet, you've got a couple more minutes to quickly put your questions to us.
I've just seen one come up actually that's about Excel or CSV documents. Well, I mean, Excel is primarily a table format. I'm not great on spreadsheets myself, I must admit, but obviously there's all the table settings will apply within Excel, header rows and columns, and sort of logical read orders and things. I'm not, because I don't know a lot about Excel with all the formulas and things, I don't know how that actually translates on a screen reader. And a CSV document, I think, is literally just a table anyway, isn't it? It's just a table of figures and columns and rows. So it's all down to making sure you label your columns and your headers, header rows and things properly. And that's, I think I showed that a little bit earlier on in the presentation, but we could go into more detail in a training course if you wanted to know more. I think that was the last one that wasn't answered.
That's it. We have
Yeah.
no more questions coming through.
Okay.
So I'll give it a few more seconds. So thank you, everyone. We've got our details up there, so I'm just going to leave them up there for the next few minutes till we get to the end of the hour. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them through to us. We are happy to put on more webinars. If there's a specialist area that people feel, well, I'd like some more information, we are happy to look at that going forward. But the next big event will be the Accessibility Web Conference next week. I don't know if James wants to say anything quickly while we've got a couple more minutes left.
Sure. So I'm hoping everybody has seen the details by now. If not, I'll put a link in the Q&A panel shortly. But we are hosting an accessibility conference next week. It's a 3-day conference on Tuesday the 9th, Wednesday the 10th, and Thursday the 11th of June. And on each day, there's going to be 3 or 4 separate 1-hour sessions. And each of those sessions is going to be taken up by an expert from within the industry. And that's starting with Government Digital Service themselves on Tuesday the 9th at 10 o'clock. As I said, sign up link will be put into the Q&A. So it's just a case of clicking on it, signing up, and you'll receive an email with all of the calendar invites. It would be great if you could join us, and feel free to submit questions in advance for any of the speakers as well.
Jane, we have one more question about social media and publishing social media on, i.e. videos on YouTube. Anything you want to comment on that one?
Well, anything to do with videos, anything, you must make sure your captioning is available. So you can either have closed captioning, where the person can elect to see the subtitles come up, or if you don't have captioning, then you shouldn't put videos up. I actually on this video burnt it in so that it was permanently there on this video, so you didn't have the choice to turn it on or off. But that's basically because we're talking accessibility, and I wanted to demonstrate how we need to put captions in. But if you use closed captioning, people can elect to use that. Social media, it is your content. James, I don't really know 100% about this. Do you know whether that, if it's your account and it's your council account or perhaps a university account, I think you are still bound to make it accessible, but I'm not sure how, say, Facebook is actually addressing things like that.
It's a grey area, and if you are responsible for any online content, then technically there could be a case that it's in your remit to make accessible. And what I would say is you have a duty under the existing Equality Act anyway to make sure that you're making reasonable adjustments for any content you're publishing, and you should at least try to make your content as accessible as possible within the limits of the platform that you're publishing it on.
I mean, if you were putting, say, some sort of maybe like a sort of advert or a poster or something, an infographic, say, on Facebook, you could publish that as the nice visual, but underneath just set out exactly what is written in that document. So if there's a post advertising some event, say, you just detail the event in words in the text part below. It means you've doubled it, but at least it means it's available to people with screen readers as well as people can see it visually.
Okay, we have one last question for you, Jane, and then I think we're completely out of time.
Oh, right, okay, right at the bottom.
That's it.
Only forms or all PDFs should be changed. What sort of reports? Only forms or all PDFs should be changed. What What about reports and financial statements? I can't kind of get my head around what the question actually means. Only forms? I'm sorry, I don't actually understand the question. I don't know if it could be written in a slightly different way.
Okay, so if whoever posted that last question, if perhaps you can send that through again and send that to the Kent Connects mailbox, and we'll get an answer back to you on that one.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure kind of where it's talking about forms. Is that a form in a PDF or is that a form on a website? Not quite sure. Okay.
Okay, thank you everyone. I hope you found it useful. We will get this presentation out to you with all the Q&A and the contact details on the last slide. That will be out with you in the next few days. We just need to make sure it's all tidy and get that ready to send out to you. So thank you all for attending, and I'll now close the presentation.